Good morning. So in 20 minutes, I'll try to tell you a story of our relatively recent exploration in Brazil. And I thought, there is a cultural connection between Portugal and Brazil, obviously, so choosing between three different projects we ran over the last couple of years, I've chosen something that should be interesting, hopefully. So what was interesting to me as historian in the past. So I really like reading about diving history and cave diving history, obviously being the main component of diving history. So in US, where I live, we track our history starting from Shaq Exley, right? And if you read his book, Caverns Measureless to Man, you'll find that most of exploration he discusses and describes is in Florida. Then if you read Martin Farr's book, which covers a lot of European cave diving, it will be primarily about England and Wales. Then here and there you can find some information about other European locations like Balkans, Portugal, Spain, Italy, but very little, right? And then, there is huge chunk of the rest of the world which is not really covered by any kind of diving history book, which is amazing. So when I got my first invitation to go to Brazil, I decided, all right, I'll do some research. Are we really exploring, or we are re-exploring after somebody else? Do we really, are we going to make any impact with our time and effort spent? So what I found is that there are 6,000 caves that are already somewhat known and studied in Brazil, out of roughly 150,000. So it's like the model predicts up to 150,000 caves in the area. And I was like, yes, probably we have a pretty good chance of exploration. Then when there is one site which kind of accumulates more information about caves than any other source known to me, that's Cave Atlas. And so, I found information online that says 6,000 known caves. So there should be maps, right? And I go to this source that's called Cave Atlas, and it has 25 caves listed. And out of them, there are 11 maps. So even when people said they explored something, they never surveyed or published the survey data. And there is no exploration without documentation. It doesn't matter. If you've been somewhere and you laid your line and you left your glory markers, if you didn't bring back the data, doesn't matter. You didn't explore anything. So that's where I got really excited about our trip. I started looking into who explored prior so I could reach out and get some information. I was really happy to know that friend of mine, colleague of mine, Patrick Widman, took part in some of the projects, and I reached out to him asking about his experience in Brazil, and he said, yeah, that's what we've done. And then I looked at where they were working, and I realized, and that's obviously my lack of education, if you will. I never thought how big the country is. So I thought, if he explored in Brazil and we're exploring in Brazil, there is some kind of connection between these two explorations. His area of exploration was 5,000 kilometers from where we were going. Yeah, great, doesn't help. Started looking through other sources, found that actually some of the early exploration in the area were GE projects, which I was really excited to learn. So we had an instructor there years ago, Marcus Verneck, who ran a couple projects. Very interesting project. He found a lot of megafauna. He found actually a very interesting fact that I, again, didn't know, that some of the passages in Brazilian caves are not water dissolved, but were constructed by giant sloths. Right? So when you're diving some of the parts of Brazil and probably Mexico, where you have these skeletons of giant sloth, prehistoric sloth, they were digging the holes, which were big enough to turn into cave passages, which is pretty amazing. So then I got really, really excited and started talking to other people who did some land-based exploration and land-based photography in Brazil, because I didn't understand. Until I got to the country, I didn't really understand why did it happen that out of that many caves, right, so few I explored. And again, I just didn't understand how big the country is. And then what I really didn't understand, how this huge country doesn't really have a lot of roads, and how parts are not really well connected to each other, and how long does it take you to get from location to location. How there is no diving support anywhere, and how as you get to the best cave diving areas, you also get out of safety, like out of real, like safety, right? You go close to Uruguay and Paraguay border and you have drug trafficking, and you go like to some of the areas and you have this constant conflict between people who try to preserve rainforest and people who need land for their cattle, so they're burning the forest, and it's like really a war. So there is a lot of things that you don't know when you looking at the country from the outside. And then we also figure out that there are permits for everything, and getting those permits is extremely hard. Luckily, we have an instructor, and that's the global part of Global Underwater Explorers. We try to place instructors everywhere because having local contacts is very useful. So we have a friend and an instructor, Sergio, who has connections to university in São Paulo. So he was instrumental in two things. One, he had a dream. He exploring those caves for 25 years. He wanted to really reinvigorate this process. He also had connections to universities, so he was able to get permits, and he even got some scientists to travel with us and lend us their support in many ways, from, again, just kind of public support and local contact support to actual scientific support. So what we've selected as our target area is the state of Mato Grosso, which is known to be very cave-rich and also known to be cave diving area. So some of the caves we're talking about, like out of these 6,000 caves, really more than half are dry caves, which is not like that's interesting for Phil, but not for me. Like I really need caves to be flooded from the very beginning. I'm not really good at ropes. If you look at me and imagine me on the rope, that's pretty funny. So we knew that there are a number of diveable springs and caves in the area, so we knew that there are places that we have been checked out by local groups, and they found potential for going cave there. So that's what we decided to focus on. It's pretty problematic area because it's 2,000 kilometers to 2,200 kilometers away from São Paulo, and there is nothing, there is no diving support in the area, so whatever you will be using, you need to take with you. So Sergio fitted a small trailer with a compressor and totally legally oxygen tanks in the frame, very safe. Then we had a bigger car with the rest of our gear. Unfortunately, in 6 trips, so 3 trips total, one ride back, one ride to the cave, and one return to São Paulo. So 6 trips total. We never came back with the same amount of cars we started with. So far, because of the weight of the gear, distances, and quality of roads, we lost at least 1 car every single trip. Like every single trip. So I have photos, and if you look at my photo albums, every single time there is a photo of one of our cars broken down on the side of the road and us moving stuff into rentals. Every single time. So first year was very kind of limited because we didn't know what are we going to find. We had a pretty small crew. We had Jared Jablonski, the president of GUE, Sergio, and myself as main group of divers. Had a couple support divers and a land videographer with us. We obviously used exclusively rebreathers. There is no other way to run a project that remote, so it was all CCRs, as one does in a remote project where you haven't been before. Me and Jared chosen to use prototype rebreathers we were testing, which was a very brave move. We got there, so we got one team on JJ CCRs, one team on unknown rebreathers of our own manufacturing. We've done a total of 5 days of diving and checked 3 different caves. 2 of them ended up being actually going caves. We were expecting to find some lines because, again, one of the caves, the main cave we're exploring now, Dolina Pai João, was reported as explored. So we were looking forward primarily to resurveying the line and evaluating the potential for further exploration. As we got there, like I'm not really an outdoorsy person, funny enough. So organizer Sergio withheld a lot of information from me. I didn't know that I need to drive for 2,200 kilometers to begin with. When we got to the location, I didn't know that we need to walk for 2 kilometers through the jungle and then climb the mountain. So I was really getting ready for Florida-style exploration. You back up your pickup truck to the lake, you get in, you do your dive, like 13 hours, you get out, you drive home. No, none of that. So we got to the mountain, I look up the mountain, like great, that's great start of the day. Walked up the mountain, looked down, like now I need to go down, brought my equipment down, now I need to rappel 40 meters down to the water. I'm like, yeah. Wasn't prepared for that at all. So I was like kind of pessimistic, and I was really hoping that the cave will go. I also was hoping that we'll find something amazing. And that, like, literally, it didn't disappoint. As soon as I jumped in, we got rebreathers in, we descended. We didn't find any lines. So whoever explored it either didn't put the lines in or didn't do a good job of doing that. We didn't find any traces of previous presence of people in the overhead environment. After 20 minutes of swimming around the lake, we found first entrance at about 36 meters. We laid line, and we found that the cave goes significantly deeper. And as we were using gas, that wasn't really good. Even, I shouldn't be saying this as I'm recorded, but we didn't use the gas appropriate for depth to begin with, and where the cave was going, these guys wouldn't work at all. So the first day was relatively short. We got out and obviously left all the gear at the site and came back again. And again, and again, and again, because what we found is probably the biggest cave. We talked about this extensively with Jared, and Jared have seen some big cave in his lifetime. I've seen some very big cave in my lifetime. None of us have seen anything as big, because as we got to, we went through the beautiful shell water passage, which ended up in a small window in the floor. We descended through this window and descended and descended and descended, found a ceiling at 118 meters. And as we secured the line on the ceiling and we couldn't see the wall to the left, wall to the right, and we've never seen the bottom. And I've never been in a void, underground void, that big water field with significant water pressure. So there was flow in the cave that big. So that was absolutely amazing. Fine, on this project, because there are only 2 people who are diving deep, I had to do kind of a lot of things on the same dive. Every dive was, we always treat dives like this as one dive, and we don't know if we'll be able to return back. We didn't, you never know if there will be rain, something will happen, you will not be able to come back. So every dive, I always try to multitask from documentation perspective. So I do something that's inadvisable. I swim ahead of person with the real exploring, turn around, take photos of explorer, so we can argue who is the explorer. And then on the way out, I would survey using Nemo, using the automatic data logger. So with every dive, I would both take photos and survey, making sure that if that's the only dive, we documented everything done to this point. So pretty big dives, quite a lot of work. So, numbers are not very exciting, especially for people who explore in Mexico. In a project of like year 1 to 2023, we laid only 900 meters of new line. But we also gathered about 150 images and surveyed everything we've done. We also found another cave. We found a day to get away from Dolina Pai João. We went to another place now on private property. That cave had some line in it, and we knew, unfortunately, it has 2 names. It's called Dolina do Joao Terencio, that's the owner. It also called a cave of the 4th of May, because on the 4th of May, 10 years ago, a diver died there. And that's the explorer, right? So there's a line, but also we know that the end of this line is also the unfortunate last dive of this person. We went in, it's pretty daunting dive because it's a cow pond, literally. Horrible visibility, there are always like cow poop all around you floating. And you need to go head down and descend for almost 90 meters vertically in a restriction where all of this follows you, falling on you, covering your gear. But then all of a sudden out of this, shitty water, you kind of fall into a huge chamber filled with blue water that flows. So we got in, my camera didn't work unfortunately, so no images whatsoever, but I did survey We laid another 300 meters of line, and then when we got out, so that me, because I didn't charge the batteries. Right, so what we got when I plotted both surveys, that these caves are on the same line, literally the crack in the ground, the fissure in the ground, along the mountain ridge. They're in the same direct line, 7 kilometers apart, at an average depth of 120 meters. So that obviously where we will need Kirk's habitats very soon if we are to ever connect these caves physically, because there is no other way to handle this decompression. So obviously we got out, we said we have to continue, there is no other way. So we started getting ready for 2024. In 2024, Jared couldn't come, so we were at quite a disadvantage of having only 2 deep divers on site, but we got an interesting change in kind of environment. Local government got so interested in potential of this site that they forced us, literally forced us to bring local military firefighters to support us. And what they can do well is ropes. That was amazing. They came in about half an hour, they set up the cave to where like all the gear was shifted around with incredible efficiency. So like I've never had such a comfortable and comfortable exploration. We also got a big advantage. Sergio, through his contacts, and because he can, he rented a chamber, right? And we had a mobile chamber on site with a technician and a doctor. So at this point, obviously, doing these dives, being 2,000 kilometers from nearest chamber, any major decompression sickness will be the fatal event. So that kind of, I don't know how much it would have physically, but psychologically, that was tremendous help. So between firefighters who could lift me out of the water and put me in the chamber, and then the doctor who can potentially treat me, that kind of relieved some of the stress. We plan to extend the exploration, but also what I found on the dive number 1, that our original survey was probably incorrect. So I spent majority of this project number 2 resurveying previous lines, fixing the line, adjusting the lines. So I really wanted to make sure that what we've done is done really well. So this project, we added just 90 meters of new line, but we've done some volumetric mapping. So we've done some of the 3D maps, which are very useful for water usage planning. And we also spend a lot of time just gathering images for local authorities and publications. So we got this, hydrologists were excited, so that's why we got permit for 2025. We returned with Jared again, and this time we did agree that main goal will be continuing exploration. Now government surprised us because we got to the site, firefighters were there, but also what we didn't know is that they built a road all the way to the mountain. So we were able to drive the chamber, and it's not just like carrying gear was not a problem. Like as much as I complain, it's okay, but we were able to bring the chamber 1.5 kilometers closer to the site, to where it actually could help. We also brought Starlink, so we didn't have doctor on site, but we had connection to a doctor in Aberdeen. So would we need treatment, we'll have connection to some of the best hyperbaric doctors instantaneously with the technician being on site. We set up the cave even better than the previous time. There are a tremendous amount of local volunteers who helped us with gear management. I don't know why it makes sounds now. So this time we explored 400 meters of extra passage. We started taking left, right, up, down measurement, which was extremely complicated. Because obviously what we've done is, the way we've measured it, we sent Jared from the existing line to the opposite side of the cave. And I don't know if you've ever spent any time listening to his presentation, read his books, but he has quite a bit of a cave diving experience. He said it was first time he was scared because he made it to the opposite wall, turned around and couldn't see my light. So he was without line, an absolute unknown at 118 meters depth, not knowing how to get back. So then I made sure I waved my light excessively. So he found me and scootered back. And based on the time it took him to cross the passage, it's in excess of 110 meters wide. Right? So it took him 4 minutes scootering full speed on ZooX scooter. So that's pretty impressive passage. So as collecting left, right, up, down, we'll have to, that's the 2026 goal, we'll have to line the other side of the cave, map the other side of the cave, and that's the only way to know the actual dimension of it. So that's kind of a conversation about what's coming up. So we're going to come back, we're going to install a whole new set of lines on the opposite side of the cave. We're hoping to bring another team to also study the ceiling, because ceiling is an unknown. The bottom currently is 128 meters deep. The ceiling we don't know, we cannot see it now. So we need 2 groups of divers at least. We need more equipment, we need more data logging, we need more light. But most importantly, we need to figure out what to do with really decompressions, because from now on, these dives are relatively short by our standards. They were 5 to 6 hours long with pretty aggressive decompressions, because locals very clearly say they don't want to be in jungle after dark. So our decompression, unfortunately, is not scientifically driven, but sunlight driven. We have to be out by sunlight. So we spend the time at depth we need, and then we do decompression we have time to. So obviously we really need some ways of mitigating it. So we're talking about bringing in our soft habitats with habitat scrubbers for the next project, but eventually we'll need to figure out something with deep habitats and extending presence at the site for over days versus single-day excursions. So kind of very closely connected to what Phil and Kirk were talking about in the previous segment. So the goal is really to, these 2 years we're going away from that other cave, the 4th of May cave. So now we know it goes kilometers in the opposite direction as well. So we have now a goal to go both directions, go try and connect or get closer to the other cave, but also see where this side goes. There are no sinkholes in that direction. So it can be indefinite exploration of the most, the biggest underground river anybody I have ever seen. So the problem is currently we're limited to 4 divers and we cannot bring more because the local hotel has 6 rooms. Right, so again, the easiest way to solve these problems is to move us underwater for the duration and leave surface accommodation for surface support. So again, that's maybe a place for you to test remote capability of habitats. So that's a little bit about the project. I think when people say all caves are explored, and when people say there is no potential for exploration, I think people just didn't study map well enough, and they're not adventurous enough. And I think when you look at all of South America, for example, beyond Brazil, there is more and more things to do. It's just harder. It takes a braver heart. It takes a little bit more ingenuity. It takes a little bit more skill. And potentially takes a little bit more technology. But I think there is endless potential to explore. And I think, again, coming back to new divers joining and younger generation coming up, I think they need to understand there is so much to do. There is probably more to do than we've ever done. And I think they will have more tools to do it, right? We can explore more because we use technology that's better. In Florida, we explore where Shaq couldn't go. And it used to be believed that if Shaq couldn't find something, it doesn't exist. But we found that cave go, we just need different technology. And that the potential is endless.